It's my pleasure to have Sandi Kahn Shelton to the table, to the kitchen table. You're an author, a novelist, a writing coach, a mom, a wife, all of that. You've been writing books now, you've got 5 out. You're working on number 6.
Working on number 6.
When did you start writing? Because I read about you at age 5 or 6, something happened. What happened at 5 or 6?
Well, at 6, my whole writing career came from this incident, I think. My mother would not give me money for the ice cream man, and we lived in Florida, and it was hot. So I went inside and I wrote a little story, and I just took the pages and glued them together, and I took it door to door until I sold it for 25 cents.
You went in your neighborhood and
yes.
You said, what was the story about? Do you
know?
Yes,
I remember it very well. It was called The King Who Slept for 3 hours and 45 seconds. And he had missed his coronation. So it was a tragic story.
That's a bit deep for 5 years old.
It was very deep. I might have been 6, and I did illustrations for it, and he was crying, and it was a lot of drama and personal angst for him. And I sold it, and I was so proud, and I bought popsicles for my sister and my best friend, and then I went home later and I told my mother what I had done, and she was mortified.
Who bought the book?
A neighbor, and she went and bought it back, and then worse, she told me I could never do that again.
Now why?
I know, wouldn't you think this would be great?
Absolutely. So 25 cents, you bought a lot of popsicles.
Yes, back in those
Boy,
days.
we can go way back when 25 cents went a long way.
When 25 cents went a long way.
So fast forward, that was your first sale.
And I thought, this is going to keep me in frozen desserts for the rest of my life. This is it. I was so happy I'd found my calling.
Did you write in high school and college?
Yes, I did. And in fact, even in elementary school, when I was 11, I sat down and I wrote a novel that I actually got to page 100 on. But I had given the character 7 brothers and sisters, and then I lost, you lose the thread.
Well, that's a lot. Yeah,
it was too many.
Fred's doing this, and
yeah,
Harry's
I couldn't keep
over
track
here.
of them, but I wrote it all the time that whole summer. I was one of those kind of boring kids, I think. My friends were all out learning to swing by their knees on the trapeze, and I was in, writing little stories.
Well, you were writing little stories about, were you shy?
No, not shy at all, but I was just intrigued, I think, with what was going on. I always have been interested in how human beings act versus how they talk about how they act. I just wanted to go deeper and deeper.
Okay, so you're doing that. 5 books.
5 books.
Some under Sandi Kahn Shelton.
Yes.
Some under this latest, the opposite of maybe, is Maddie Dawson.
Maddie Dawson.
Tell me how you get as an author from, writing with your real name.
Yes.
To this fictitious name.
Well, it was kind of an interesting story, actually. My first novel, which was called What Comes After Crazy, it took me 17 years to write that novel.
Why?
Children.
They get in the way.
The job, the laundry, and it was the kind of thing that I could only do when absolutely everything else was done. And just, the way you need the headspace for writing.
I'm surprised that you hung on to a storyline for 17 years.
I know. Isn't that
you didn't
strange?
Get bored or change it. We should say you were a great feature writer for the New Haven Register, which is how I knew your writing.
And I did a humor column for them for 10 years about my family life, which was sort of close. It was all true, but it was close to fiction. I got to write it in that kind of style of this happened and this happened.
When was the moment that somebody said, I like what you wrote, I'm going to publish that?
Well, that was the moment that I guess it happened at the Register, really, when they allowed me to write the humor column. Because before that, I could always just write the stories. I covered Branford and I covered North Haven, and I loved that, going to meetings, and you get all up into the town politics and people's passion for things. So that was all really fun, but I wanted to be doing this other thing. I had wanted to be writing fiction ever since my popsicle days. So I had this novel in the drawer, and I would periodically take it out and reread it and just sit down and go with it. And it was like vacation. In fact, we go to the Cape every year, and there's all these pictures of me sitting at the kitchen table, just like typing away. Yes, typing away while everybody else is going to the beach, because it was the time I could really relax.
How did you find, because I've talked to a lot of authors on this show about how they write. Some want, to be by water. Some want to be in their home. Some want kids all around. I mean, how is it that you find what it is that makes you artistic and makes a story come out? How did you find it, and what is it?
It's so interesting, that part of it. I can kind of write best when there's something going on around me. I like being able to focus in, so I'm often at Starbucks writing. And mostly it works. There's some days that it's too interesting at Starbucks and I can't.
They should pay you for this, by the way.
They would have to pay a lot of people if they did. Everybody who's writing a
'Cause you
novel at
see-
Starbucks.
yeah.
I know, I feel a little guilty. You know, you go in, it's like an office. Everybody's there writing for the price of a cup of coffee, you know.
So you write it. My question to you
Yes.
was, when someone said, "I'm going to pay you to,
Oh, yes.
to write this,"
Well, so then the Register said, you can go ahead and do this. You can write a humor column. And I loved it and did it every week and did it for 10 years. And at first it was very scary and it was hard because I had children and I had to ask their permission for every single thing that I wrote about them. And sometimes they said no. And, you know, there were weeks that I always said that the best weeks were when something bad happened, but not so bad that I couldn't write about it in the
because you
column.
didn't have to reveal that much.
Exactly.
About
I
yourself.
had control of it.
You write this book, someone says, "We're going to publish it," and it starts to sell. What was that feeling like?
Well, just selling that book was amazing because over that 17 years, I must have rewritten that book 3 or 4 times. And I would get to the end of it and I would read it.
This
and
is
I
the
would-
one that you held on to for 17 years.
Yeah, and I would get to the end of it. I didn't know what I was doing. You know, I had no training in it, just that I read all the time. So I'd get to the end and I'd think, oh, it's still not right. And I'd start again and write the whole thing again. And I never really thought I would finish it. I thought this was just going to be the thing I did for my whole life. And then one day, I got it finished. I read it. I liked it. I got an agent who was a fiction agent, sent it to her, and she fiddled with it for a while. And a year later, she said, let's send it out. And it sold within 2 weeks.
The feeling was what?
The feeling was speechlessness. I still remember that phone call of we're buying the book, you know, and I honestly couldn't talk. I lost the power of words. It's never happened to me before. And Stephanie, my daughter, was home, and I remember her looking at me and coming over thinking, what's that? What's wrong? What's wrong? And I said, the book. And my agent said, well, do you have any questions for me? And I couldn't say anything. And finally she said, we'll talk tomorrow. Maybe by then you'll be okay.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was
the name of the book was?
What Comes After Crazy.
Now,
Yes.
you're 4 more books after that.
Yes.
And you're writing a 6th book. You go from Sandi Kahn Shelton to Maddie Dawson. Why
Right.
the switch?
Why the switch? Well, my first 3 books were really sort of pegged as chick lit. Do you remember chick lit? It
Yes,
was
I do.
all, you
Yep.
know, Bridget Jones's Diary and everything. And when that book came out, that was the going thing right then. And so they said, this will be great. We'll slot this into chick lit. And it wasn't really chick lit. It was about a woman in her 30s, you know, getting divorced and with her kids and all that kind of thing. And her mom. It was really a story about her crazy mother. That's the what comes after crazy part. But I could see from a marketing standpoint why they did it. So they did that for the next 2 books. And then the 4th book that I wrote was about a woman who's 49 and she's looking at her marriage and do I want to keep this together now that the kids are grown? And what do I want out of my life? And they said, well, this isn't chick lit. And I said, no, that's true, it isn't. And they said, well, you won't find your audience, or your audience won't find you, because
Interesting.
you're sort of pegged this way. So we need to give you a new name and a new start.
So Maddie Dawson, did you make it up?
I made it up. I made it up.
Did you really, or do you know a Maddie Dawson?
I don't know Maddie Dawson.
Okay. So this is a departure how? It's not chick lit, it's what?
It's some people have called it hen lit, which is
For
terrible.
heaven's sakes.
Just call it cow lit. You know, why not just be done with it? Why do they? I don't know why they have to label things that way.
Who's your audience for this, do you think?
I think
Because it starts out really steamy.
it starts.
I read
out
the first
st-
paragraph
right.
and I went, whoa, Sandy.
Yes, they are in bed in the first paragraph.
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are. But it's really, I don't know who's the audience. I think it's women who are trying to find their way. I find myself writing about people's second chances. And
Is
maybe,
that you?
I think in a way it is.
How so?
Just because coming to this fiction career, which I came to late, you know, was finding a second chance for myself. And I never really believed it was going to happen. I thought, okay, I have a great life as a newspaper reporter, and I get to write this column. And I have 3 nonfiction books that we haven't talked about, which were humor parenting books. But fiction, you know, is where I always wanted to be, and I didn't think it would happen. And when it did, it changed everything for me.
Where do you hope to be? Are you writing series of books? Because that seems to me, I see a lot of authors that they write a series and they get something going, and now the money starts to come in because people are
waiting for the
next
next
one.
one.
Yep.
I haven't been able to think of a series, and people say, oh, I want to know what happens to this character, write the sequel. But there's something about, you know, when you're coming up with a book and the character kind of tells you the story and there's an arc to it and you honor that arc, and I don't know how you get to the end of it and then come up with another arc. I'm just not sure of
Well,
how
you
that
just have to
works.
go to Starbucks and just listen to the universe around you
That
and you get
may
it.
be it.
You also are a writing coach.
Yes.
And when I was doing research on you, I thought this was brilliant. You tell people, or have told people, to write about their name.
That's how we
Why?
start. Because I feel like everybody has a story about their name. It's so interesting. It's a safe place to begin. And people, you know, so many people have been hurt by writing teachers in school or told you're not a writer, you shouldn't even be doing this. And so they come into my workshop and they're kind of, you know, hurting and scared. It would be like me trying to go take a flute class, you know, it would be like, ugh. So I want to give them something that they immediately can do, that they immediately have an opinion about. They were named for someone, or they have an opinion on whether they liked their name. I was Sandy with an I because of the 50s, and I never liked that. It always seemed like just such a trivial name, you know.
So that's what you write about. I'm Anne, so that starts with an A.
Yes.
And so in class, alphabetical order, I was always first
Always
and
first.
always in the front row.
Right.
So I had to know what I was doing all the time.
Oh yeah, because their eyes were on you.
Right, and then it was, is there an E at the end of Anne, or is it just plain Anne?
Right.
So that
Yes,
gives you a
could,
thread.
exactly.
to
It's a
start
thread
writing.
to start. And were you named for someone, or did
My
your parents?
grandmother.
Your grandmother. Yeah.
On my maternal side.
Right.
And that's a whole nother story.
Of
Which is
course.
great. What have you learned as you're going? And I think that we're constantly evolving and learning as we age and do things outside the box that we wouldn't normally do. What are you learning as a writer that you can impart to others who will see this and go, she did it, maybe I can too?
I think that we all have stories, and that the fear of getting it down, and it's not easy. It's not easy to sit there and wait for the words to come and to judge them as they're coming. I've learned that if you just let yourself go, don't judge what you're doing. Just let that creative spirit go. And maybe artists do this, and musicians and photographers. I think everybody needs this. It's like play. And don't judge it. Let it all just out on the paper, and then go and look back at it.
Don't worry about the grammar either.
Don't worry about the grammar. I mean, some people need to worry about grammar because they can't go on if they don't, you know, in spelling. They need that to be right before they can. But don't let that be the thing that hangs you up. Just go. And I also feel that everybody should write their life story and write the things that have happened to them, because only you can tell your story.
And when you're gone,
And when you're
everybody
gone.
can read about what happened.
Exactly. And we can't all leave great sums of money to our kids, but we can leave these stories, you know, that mean so much.
What's book number 6 about? And what's it called? Do you have a title?
It's called Until You Called Me, and it's a story about a woman who was adopted and always wanted to find her birth parents, and she's obsessed with it. And then finally she finds that she has a sister, and both of them were given up for adoption. And so she thinks she and the sister will go off together and find their mom.
Do you have a bestseller that you haven't written yet?
I hope so. I do. I wish I could write mysteries, because I think that's what people love to read. And
But I think you can. Go back to Starbucks again.
go back to
and just listen to the universe. So you want to write a mystery?
Well, I would like it if I could think of a mystery. You know, I'm one of these people that is always shocked by how mysteries turn out. I never see things coming. You know, I'll sit and watch with my husband, and he goes, "Oh, see that guy? He's the one that did." Well, what? How do you know? So I think I may be too simple. I may be too simple.
No, I want to see the mystery, and you'll come back and
I'll
talk
come
about
back.
it.
I'll come back and do it.
Sandy, best piece of advice you can give to somebody who is afraid to start?
I think you need to start just where you are, and maybe that's where the name thing comes in. And then describe the place where you feel the safest. You know, my daughter, I have a daughter who says that she calls the beach the hospital, and she said whenever she needs something just to go right, she can go and sit at the beach and she feels all that healing. I think all of us have that place, and we can go and write about that and what it is. And once you're in touch with that stuff, story after story will come. It's just like when we were just talking about your name. You know, it reminds you of your maternal grandmother. I've always wanted to write about the two grandmothers. You know, the two grandmothers are always so opposite from each other, and we have such feelings about them. I had one who was very staid and Lutheran and wore navy blue all the time. We called her the blue grandmother. And then my southern grandmother wore white and had a suntan and drove a yellow convertible. And she was the white grandmother. And she was just this fun
Mm.
person. It was because of what she wore and what she thought about.
Put mystery in that, and you've got the New York Times bestseller. Sandy with an I.
Sandy with an
Kahn
I,
Shelton.
yes.
Thank you so much for being on.
Oh, thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
having
and we'll
me.
wait for book number 6.
All right, next year.